This will sound very strange, but President Trump's ride around the racetrack of the Daytona 500 in 2020 in his limo nicknamed the Beast by the Secret Service, and the massive fiery crash at that Daytona 500, and Obama's Secret Service nickname Renegade, and Obama's viral social media post of him doing the trendy Renegade dance, and Buffalo Bills number 3, Damar Hamlin's collapse onto the football field exactly 30 years after the Buffalo Bills made the biggest comeback in football history, is a prophecy from the Christian God of the Bible that the Antichrist Barack Obama will make a big comeback and serve a third term as the 48th president, after it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a fiery plane crash on November 28, 2023, as well as the 6.0 magnitude earthquake off the shore of Tokyo and the Olympics on Obama's 60th birthday, and the death of the actress that played 101-year-old Old Rose in the movie Titanic, and the vandalism of Plymouth Rock, and a prophetic asteroid are all part of the same prophecy that is predicting Harris's death in a plane crash and Obama's return to the White House, but also that an asteroid will hit Earth on May 26, 2024, the same day as the resurrection rapture. The date that this video is posted proves that these predictions are being made ahead of time, as do these time-stamped emails and forensic notes PDF documents. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. Alright, this video was originally produced prior to October 17th, and the amazing, profound prophetic signs that we received on October 17th confirmed all of the analysis that you see in this diagram, which is extremely profound. It is 100% confirmation. The signs that occurred on October 17th are explained in detail in the absolute must-watch Gaza explosion video, so I won't say anything more here. But the signs they revealed, adding an additional 2 times 3 sets of 7 days to reach the date it is now predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on November 28th. All right, now there's a couple other things here before beginning this amazing video, truly amazing video. One thing that I missed here is that this 150 weeks plus 41 weeks is actually 191 weeks, which is very profound also, which gives this connection here a second witness, because 191 hints at 9/11, which is symbolism God uses in his signs, as you will see in this video, for example, to point to the judgment warning on 9/11 in 2001, among other reasons for 9/11 symbolism. It points to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10 through 11 also. One other thing too, this date here, November 21st, on which it is predicted, or it was, that Barack Obama will become the 48th president. A lot of understanding and knowledge regarding God's signs has come to light since the original production of this video. And it is now believed that Barack Obama will become the president on January 7th and the 51st vice president on December 26th, which will be 5 times 7 days after this date. And I can't explain in this video why that is relevant, but one thing is that it hints at the I-57 highway, which connects the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, including Cairo, Illinois, to Chicago, the home city of the Antichrist. And without further ado, let's begin this amazing video. All right, this will be some of the most amazing information you have ever learned in your life. This diagram here is truly profound. There's so much to get at here, and I'm torn as to whether to make the title of this video another video titled with Damar Hamlin in it, because I've already made one, and I might change the title of that other video, which is more regarding the connections to Damar Hamlin with Gerald Ford, the football president. That is an extremely important video. Make sure you watch that video. Whether or not I title this one the Damar Hamlin video or the Daytona 500 video remains to be seen. But this is extremely important as well. Not only will this information be mind-boggling, but it will be extremely important. And let's get into it with the center of the diagram here. Well, first of all, the prediction being made is that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on October 17th, 2023, right here in the diagram. And that Barack Obama will become the 48th president on November 21st, 2023. Also, an asteroid will hit Earth on May 26th, 2024. That's a typo. Oops. And that'll also be the day of the rapture, the resurrection rapture event. And the prediction coming to pass will prove everything that I am saying in this video is true, especially the controversial things. And this is the purpose of this prediction that is from God, and the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying and to end the controversy. Case closed, end of debate over these certain things, including who is the Antichrist and what is the mark of the Antichrist, for example, and when is the rapture, for example, and when is the second coming. So let's get started here. This was the day that Damar Hamlin collapsed onto the football field while he was playing in a Monday night football game, a nationally televised game against the Cincinnati Bengals in Cincinnati. All right, so why Cincinnati is prophetic in this sign here. This was a Monday night nationally televised game, and it was in Cincinnati, and Cincinnati symbolizes America, as I will explain, but this makes this a national warning of judgment for the nation of America, and specifically also the American church, which in reality is synonymous with America. America is God's Gentile nation, even though it has turned away from God at this time. So Cincinnati, because the name Cincinnati comes from the Society of Cincinnatus, of which George Washington was a leader, and Cincinnatus is named after the Roman general Cincinnatus. Washington was a general as well. At one point in American history, Cincinnati was the major city west of the coast. It was an important city at one time. Not that it isn't today, but it was the biggest city at one point in the Midwest. So now Cincinnati, this gives us national symbolism. And also Cincinnati happens to be the location of a statue that was donated by Mussolini during his reign. And it is in a park in Cincinnati today. It's a replica of the statue that symbolizes Rome, the Capitolina statue, the most symbolic sculpture that symbolizes Rome. It's the wolf breastfeeding the baby wolves. I don't know the story behind that, though, or at least I forget it. If I probably read it at one point, but anyway, that goes back to the origins of Rome, the statue. So it symbolizes Rome, and it was donated by the dictator of Rome, Mussolini, who is Antichrist symbolism, the dictator of Rome. And it was donated during the 10th year of his reign, which is why on the statue there is a prominent X, which is the Roman numeral for the number 10. But God uses the X as symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist, which I will explain. But first of all, the statue is also in a park named Eden. It's in Eden Park, which hints at the Garden of Eden, from which man fell and was judged in the fall. And so this is communicating that the mark of the Antichrist is judgment. But not only that, but for America. And not only that, for the American church. Which is the purpose of the end times period, incidentally. A lot of Christians don't understand that. They think something to the effect that the world has become quite dark and evil, and so God now needs to bring about his judgment. There's truth in that, but God could end the world in a second and throw who he wants to throw into hell. The primary purpose of the end times and the Antichrist is to test the faith of quote-unquote Christians. And the timing of the end times and why it is happening now is obviously because God is very, very displeased with the church, specifically the American church and specifically the American evangelical church of Laodicea, which is the church of Laodicea. Okay, and so that's the reason why the end times are happening now. It's because of judgment for the church. As Peter said, judgment begins with the church. It's not random that the end times are happening now. It's it's God's Gentile nation that has departed from God, and that's why the end times and judgment are coming on America. And that's another thing. Matthew 25 is misunderstood by most Christians. It's not talking about when the separation of the sheep and the goats of the nations. It's not when it's talking about judgment for the nations. It's not talking about separating believers from unbelievers. It's talking about judgment of the nations that knew God. If you read that clearly and correctly, furthermore in context, it follows directly other parables that are talking about Christians, including the 10 bags of gold and the parable of the bridesmaids that were sleeping. This is a Christian parable. It's a parable for Christians. And that's another thing. The reason why the judgment is coming now is because of the doctrine that Jesus said he hates in Revelation chapter 2, and is coming to make war on with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, which is why the Lord is very displeased with the church right now. But the root of that is the bad doctrine, the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, which produces the bad fruit. And it's the doctrine that makes the church of Laodicea. Because if you recall, Jesus said that that church thinks that it is in need of nothing and that they are all good, which is exactly the doctrine of the vast majority of evangelicals today. Once saved, always saved. Jesus warned many, many times in the Bible of hell. All but 2 of those times were for born again, born of God Christians, believers. Jesus was warning about hell for believers, including in Matthew 25. The one Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold was thrown into hell. Okay, there was the 5 bridesmaids that were left behind, for example. They were Christians. They were sleeping. So that's the same with the other parable there about the separating the sheep from the goats. God, the end times period, in other words, what I'm saying, is not to judge the world. It's to judge the Christian nations that knew God, primarily America, and secondarily the Protestant English-speaking countries, such as Canada, Australia. And that's why, for example, why these were the worst countries for the totalitarianism in recent years. This is all judgment for these countries that knew God before the Lord returns and reveals to the whole world. He's judging these nations that knew God. And America, like I'm saying, is synonymous with the church. And the reason for the dark times right now, the reason why they are so dark, is because of Christians that, for example, are only shining their light within the four walls of the church. If they're shining their light at all, because in the church of Laodicea, Jesus isn't even in that church. He's knocking at the door. Christians misunderstand that passage too. They think somehow that that's applying to a new believer. Let Jesus in your heart, as they would say, right? But no, he's knocking at the door of the church that Jesus isn't in. He's not even in that church. He's not even inside. He wants to be, but he's not even inside, and no one even notices. That's the case with the church today. We wouldn't be in the totalitarian movement that we are in were it not for the do nothing, once saved, always saved church. Right? So make sure you watch the 23 church signs, and when the prediction in this video comes to pass, you will know that you need to watch that video, arguably the most important video on this channel, and especially if you're a Christian. And if you don't watch that video after the prediction comes to pass, I really don't know what to tell you, because the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove the controversial things that I am saying, including what I have just said. Now, let's get into the amazing information here. This sign occurred in Cincinnati for this particular reason, to point to America, and also the mark of the Antichrist, as I was explaining, because of the statue that is in Cincinnati that was donated by the dictator of Rome, because Cincinnati is Rome. It's the name comes from Rome, as I just explained. But also, things come full circle, and Rome, like in the beginning of the church age, persecuted true Christians. Rome will also, in the end, also again persecute true Christians, which is why Pope Francis is the first of the two antichrists. Barack Obama is the second one. And no, the second one isn't because he's named the false prophet. Read the other passages. I mean, the countless, there's many, many other passages that clearly identify Rome, first of all, as the headquarters of the Antichrist, and the Pope as the Antichrist. And I really don't know what to say other than anyone that thinks, anyway, it doesn't really matter, I suppose, which order you get in, which is, I'm just amazed how many Christians get that order wrong. The 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, furthermore, says that the Antichrist is first apostate from his seat of apostasy, from his seat of religious power, before he is political. Okay, and that's... Now, if you are a conservative Catholic and you recognize that this Pope Francis, is a bad guy, please understand that what God is communicating here and why the Pope is the Antichrist is because popes throughout all of history have always been lowercase antichrists. The office of papacy is Antichrist. That is why the Pope is the Antichrist. That is why Pope Francis is the Antichrist. It's not because he randomly happens to be a bad guy. It's because it was designed for this from the very beginning. That's why Paul said, when he was speaking in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, he referred to what is restraining the Antichrist as a he and a what. Well, why did he speak cryptically? Furthermore, he said to the Thessalonians that they knew what he was talking about. So why did he refer to what was holding back the Antichrist as a he and a what? Why did he speak cryptically? It's because he was referring to Caesar as the he and what? The Rome. What was holding back the Antichrist was Caesar and the Roman system, which Caesar moved to Constantinople, allowing the bishops of Rome to rise in power and ultimately become the emperors and popes. So the first pope was an emperor. And so anyway, Paul knew from the very beginning that the Pope in Rome would be the Antichrist. So, and it's also very evident in Daniel chapter 9, the leader of the people who will come will destroy the city and the sanctuary is the Antichrist in the last verse. And the leaders of Rome are descendants, the popes are descendants from the leaders of Rome. The leader who will come is the leader of Rome. So, and that's just scratching the surface for how it is very clear from prophecy that the Pope is the Antichrist. But what conservative Catholics lack is wisdom and knowledge. And that is because they continue to get the propaganda from the Catholic system. And what I'm saying, I want to say this politely and respectfully, but God hates Catholicism. If you know the Bible, the thing that he hates most is pagan worship, false religious worship. And he was constantly reprimanding and judging the Jews for this, for mixing paganism with the true religion, which is what Catholics do. When Rome converted to Christianity, it didn't just drop all of its former pagan ways and religious worship. It just repackaged them into a wrapper of Christianity that makes it look like Christianity. I mean, the worship. So anyway, there's all kinds of knowledge on the internet, but the conservative Catholics refuse to look at it. And that's because it's human nature. It's, for one thing, in psychology called belief perseverance. When someone is confronted with information that contradicts their worldview, they block it out. And Catholics are more interested in tradition than they are truth. Okay? So the man-made religion on top of the Bible, which isn't the Bible, and that's not controversial, and every Catholic should know that. It's very basic. But the Catholics, however, believe that they have the authority through popes to create all of this extra-biblical man-made religion. But they don't. They don't have that authority. There's no such thing as apostolic tradition, etc. Peter was never in Rome, and on and on. Okay? So, enough. You need to come out of her, my people, as prophecy says. And the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove this. You need to get out of the Catholicism and just go with the Bible. Quit the pagan part that you've added to Christianity. Just go with the Bible. And forget the twisting of the Bible verses that the Rome has done over the years to make it seem like their traditions are supported in the Bible. It's a lie. It's a lie. And if you believe that lie, you're susceptible to falling for the Antichrist, which is the Pope. Fortunately, if you're a conservative Catholic, you're almost there. You're ready to wake up, hopefully, but wake up fully. Get out of the Catholicism altogether. Just go with the Bible. Okay? Now, so the thing is that when Christians were persecuted in Rome, they were persecuted in the Colosseum, which is why this game was a Monday night football game in the modern day Colosseum, the football stadium. And why the Cincinnati team is named Bengals. I mean, what a coincidence. Because the Christians were persecuted in the Colosseum with tigers. And Bengals are the largest species of tiger. That's why the Cincinnati Bengals. It's Rome and Colosseum symbolism. And this was the day that Damar Hamlin collapsed and went to a hospital in Cincinnati, etc. And Damar Hamlin, as we know, collapsed due to having taken the mark of the Antichrist. Hopefully you know that. And if you don't, you're part of the 30%, I suppose, that are in the totalitarian movement. I have to warn you as well, wake up. And you are on the path to hell. The purpose of the prediction here is to help you wake up, overcome your belief perseverance, and come out of the blue team. Quit the Civil War. Just go with truth. Stop hating conservatives and true Christians. It's a spiritual hate that you have. It's rooted in spirituality. It's a spiritual root. It's actually rooted, if you have the eyes to see it, which of course you don't if you're still on the blue team, but I'm just going to tell you this, and it's something for you to think about. It's rooted in your hate for God. People choose to go to hell. They choose to reject God. And spiritually, over time, that develops into greater and greater hatred to the point where you end up persecuting Christians, ultimately, which is what is happening, right? Because obviously, in general, it is the Christians that are against the thing, and materialists that aren't, that are for the thing, in general. So there's a little background there for you as to the significance of Damar Hamlin collapsing in Cincinnati while playing the Bengals. The mark of the Antichrist is symbolized by the number 22 because the Tav mark, okay, so, oh yes, if I didn't elaborate enough, the reason for the X on the statue is that it is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist in the book of Ezekiel would have been a Tav mark in an ancient Hebrew. The Tav was an X. So the X in God's signs is symbolism for the mark of the Antichrist. And God has put this X on the statue in Eden Park, which is symbolic of the fall, right? And judgment. And so this Tav letter, which was an X, is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet and the 22nd letter. And the Hebrew letters are also symbols for things, and the Tav letter is symbolism for prophetic signs. And so the X is a prophetic sign in God's signs. So it's symbolized by the number 22, and the mark of the Antichrist, because the Tav letter is the 22nd letter, but the mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible. The Tav is the last letter. The book of Revelation is the last book. And the book of Revelation is the 22nd book out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. So that's why the number 22 in God's signs is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And that's why we have this 222 days connection over here from the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. And that's because the location of her, so the 222 days gets us to the date of the rapture, which will be the evacuation, the rescue of God's faithful from the severe persecution from the Antichrist, Pope Francis and Barack Obama. But in Bible prophecy, the Antichrist system is already in place and is handed over to the Antichrist. The Antichrist doesn't create the Antichrist system. The Antichrist system is in the process of being created as we speak, and it will be handed over to the Antichrist very, very soon. But that's what's been happening over the last few years, is the creation of the Antichrist system, the totalitarian movement, and the coming and underway genocide, which is the persecution of Christians, ultimately, through the mark of the Antichrist, the thing that caused Damar Hamlin to collapse. You know what I'm talking about. Which is symbolized by 22, hence the 222 days connection from the day that she is predicted to die in a plane crash. And this is because she will die in a location that will hint or symbolize the mark of the Antichrist. Her plane crash is predicted to be in St. Louis, which is near the area of the country nicknamed Little Egypt, including Cairo, Illinois, which is where the paths of totality will cross over each other of the two eclipses and engender an X. The upcoming 2024 path of totality eclipse from south to north will cross over the path of totality that crossed the nation from west to east in 2017, exactly where it peaked, which is in the middle of the country. And so the middle of these two paths of these eclipses will cross over each other in their middles and engender an X over the country, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Now, an X is where two lines intersect each other. The midpoint of the X is what makes an X. And this is how God has identified the mark of the Antichrist in this case. The middle date of the two eclipses that will engender an X, the middle date was December 11th, 2020, and that was the day that the thing was first approved. And Trump, God's trumpet, trumpeted this event from the Oval Office, for example. And it was also the day that SpaceX which is down here, by the way, in this diagram, SpaceX, the SN9 rocket fell off of its platform. But the X in SpaceX is also symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. And SpaceX and Elon Musk and his Neuralink company are all symbolism for transhumanism technology, which is the thing, the mark of the Antichrist. So that's why SpaceX there in that connection, okay? And so that's why she will crash in St. Louis, which will be near the paths of the eclipses that will cross over each other and engender an X, but also the path of the 2017 eclipse passed over St. Louis and peaked at 1:17 p.m., which is why she will die in a crash there on the date 10/17. But St. Louis is the area code 314, and this 222 days connection is also 31 weeks and 4 days, which hints at 314. It also hints at Isaiah chapter 31, verse 4. I explained the reason for verse 4 in other videos, but this chapter begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt." And Kamala Harris will crash near Little Egypt. And furthermore, when she crashes, it will be a symbolic going down to Egypt. Okay. Now, and also in Moses asked for God's name at the burning bush, and God gave his name to Moses in Exodus 3:14. And the symbol for I am in Hebrew is the exact same symbol for pi, which is 3.14, hence Exodus 3:14. Okay, now, okay, so let's get into why Damar Hamlin is number 3. When Damar Hamlin collapsed, the teammates for the Buffalo Bills gathered in a huddle and they kneeled and bowed their head and were praying for Damar Hamlin. Except for one player, he was still standing, maybe because there wasn't enough space for him to kneel with people all around him. But in the iconic image, you can see his back is faced to the camera, and we can see that his name is Neil, and he was the only one that wasn't kneeling. And his jersey number is 33, which hints at 3. Okay? This is amazing, and I'll explain more why in a second. But yeah, so this is all, but it was what it was, because this was in Cincinnati in the symbolic Colosseum, persecution of Christians. This is symbolic of kneeling to Satan, which is what one does when they take the thing. The spiritual abomination, that is the thing, when it's taken, is a symbolic kneeling to Satan. So Damar Hamlin and the team that all took the thing were kneeling to Satan, in fact. All right, now, what I didn't mention yet is that St. Louis and Cincinnati, okay, there's this connection here of this, which I'll explain in a second, but they are connected by the U.S. Highway 50. And 50, the number, is symbolic of the church. The Feast of Pentecost is symbolic of the church, and Pentecost literally means 50th day, and God uses the number 50 as symbolism for the church in his signs, and that's why we have this symbolic persecution of the church here, with the nation being symbolized by Cincinnati and the Colosseum and the mark of the Antichrist, all of this symbolism. Okay? Because again, that's the primary purpose of the end times. It's persecution or the testing of faith of Christians, quote unquote. Now, when this prediction comes to pass, it will prove the controversial things that I'm saying in this video. And this is the purpose of this prediction. The reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove the things that I'm saying. To miss that point, to not appreciate that, is to miss entirely this point, this prediction that is from God, and this video channel. And my advice is that if you are committed to not appreciating that, I recommend turning off the video and doing something else more productive with your time. But what God is trying to do right now through this prediction is to confirm for you that the things that I am saying are true, including what the mark of the Antichrist is. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or a false form of religious worship, or a supposed new dispensational age, which begins supposedly after all Christians will be raptured, which is in fact a doctrine that Jesus hates. And one reason why many Christians have taken it is that it is judgment for that doctrine, dispensationalism. Okay? So, but there's nowhere in the Bible that says that one cannot repent if they have taken the thing. Okay? The mark of the Antichrist. So anyway, that's why Damar Hamlin and this kneeling in Cincinnati, all right? Now, let's see. The thing is, the reason why, a big reason for why he's number 3, and also therefore number 33, is this exact 30 years connection to the biggest comeback in NFL history. All right? 30 years in the Bible is symbolic of a king. Joseph and David were made rulers at the age of 30 years old. Furthermore, Joseph, although he isn't Antichrist symbolism, he was made a ruler by the king of Israel. And in the Bible, the king of Israel is Antichrist symbolism. And this is all hinting at the third term for the Antichrist king, the big comeback. This game that was the biggest comeback in NFL history is called The Comeback. But the comeback will be when Barack Obama becomes the president again, through the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash and him serving a third term. And this is why Damar Hamlin was number 3, or is number 3. All right. Now, okay. So let's get into this game here. This was the biggest comeback in postseason history. Until last season, in the regular season, it was the biggest comeback of all time. But last year, there was a game in which the opponent overcame a 33-0 point deficit. Okay, so another 3 there. That game is also prophetic because the quarterback in this game 30 years ago, Frank Reich for the Buffalo Bills, just happened to be also the quarterback in the game in the biggest comeback in college football history. So when he was in college, he was the quarterback leading the team to the biggest comeback in college football history. Okay? And in the game last year, in which the deficit was overcome, 33 points, he was the coach of the losing team, the Indianapolis Colts. Okay? The Colts, because the 31st chapter of Isaiah begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses." God has been using the Colts and Kentucky Derby signs and horse signs to ultimately point to the American Pharaoh Triple Crown winner in order to point to the American Pharaoh Barack Obama. Long story, which is explained in other videos. But that's the reason for the Colts. Now, and so Frank Reich, amazingly, was the coach of that team. But why is his name Reich? Well, this hints at the Third Reich, the Nazi regime. Their partners in crime were Mussolini, the socialist dictators, the nationalist socialists. Right? And so the name Reich hints at it's Antichrist symbolism. It hints at the Third Reich, which ultimately hints at the third term of the new totalitarian movement, which is also a socialist movement. One of the biggest misconceptions in all of history is that somehow the Nazis were the opposite of communists, but they were two of the same breed. They're collectivists. One was nationalists, one was internationalists. That's the only difference. But they were socialists, and socialism and collectivism is evil. Because ultimately, it leads to the trampling of the human rights of the individual. Without exception. That's always the case. And that is the case currently, right now. But, of course, the people in the 30% of the in the hypnotized 30% in the totalitarian movement, because totalitarian movements are different than dictatorships, where 30% of the population support the dictator, whereas dictators rule by fear. So they support the totalitarian movement. And so anyway, so a large number of the people will love the Antichrist. In fact, probably the majority. Well, we already know the majority of people love Pope Francis and Barack Obama, right? It's only true conservatives and true Christians that recognize the truth about these men. But they are socialists, both of them. Barack Obama is a massive Marxist, but he has hidden his true colors during his presidency. But those true colors will come out. And Pope Francis is a clear Marxist as well. And anyway, I won't get off too much more than that. But anyway, so that's my Third Reich, because the new Nazi is Barack Obama. Just because Barack Obama is a Democrat and on the blue team does not make him, by default, not a Nazi. He is a Nazi. The Nazis were socialists, all right? And they're in the process of perpetrating a genocide, just like the Nazis, but it'll be far worse. And the thing is a political weapon. It's being used as a political weapon, whether or not the hypnotized recognize it or not. But okay, so this game, the biggest comeback, the deficit was 32 points, which hints at 4 times 8. And the 48th president, 48 points, 48th president. All right. Now, the game which Frank Wright coached that he lost to was to the team from the 32nd state. And another reason why God uses 32, for example, this 32-point deficit and the loss to the team from the 32nd state, is God is pointing to the 32nd prime number, which is 131, which is for the purpose of pointing to the 131st word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the thing. Okay? The game, they overcame a score. They won by 3 points, which hints at the third term and the 30 years connection to player number 3. All right? The winning team, well, let's just do this first. The total points in the game were 79 points. That hints at the 22nd prime number. And again, the number 22 is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. More Antichrist symbolism. And it again connects to Damar Hamlin's collapse due to the mark of the Antichrist, which in turn, as I explained, connects with the 220 days, 22 days, okay? Okay, now the winning team scored 41 points. That's why we have the 30 years connection, then followed by the 41 weeks. The losing team scored 38 points, and that's because the only unelected president who was never elected president or president was Gerald Ford, the 38th president. Just like how Barack Obama will serve a third term again through being unelected. He will be appointed instead, just like Gerald Ford. This is how he will overcome the 22nd Amendment that restricts someone from being elected more than twice. And that's also hinted at with this 79 points, the 22nd prime number, the third term, through overcoming the 22nd Amendment, through being appointed, just like Gerald Ford, the 38th president, thus the 38 points in the game. Okay, now there's more to this story here, and God uses moon signs in his signs, and they don't necessarily have to be the actual moon. But the reason is that the moon symbolizes Christ. It is a giant rock, and rock is symbolism for Jesus in the Bible. The sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. This is why watching the moon and watching the timing of the moon is important in the Bible. And this is symbolism for watching for the timing of the Lord's return through prophetic signs, including moon signs. And this is why the quarterback for the losing team is part of this sign. The first black quarterback to have been entered to the Hall of Fame, the Football Hall of Fame. Hints at the first black president who will serve a third term. Okay. Now, the game was won due to a controversy. There was an interception that shouldn't have been. It was a controversial call by the referee, and the game pivoted on that. And so this is symbolism for the controversial president, who, first of all, was the unconstitutional president because he was born in Kenya. The prediction being made in this video will prove it. That, if you don't know that, you should know that though. And also, he will controversially overcome the 22nd Amendment. And of course, the whole reason he'll become the president again in the first place is because Harris and the other guy, they were installed with the shoplifted referendum. And that's controversial too. So that's why this controversial play involving the first black quarterback inducted into the Hall of Fame, whose name is Moon. Now, I wrote a paragraph regarding this back in January when I first learned all of this. So I'm just going to read that paragraph now. Okay, so the comeback. The comeback was the biggest comeback in a postseason game, and until this year's prophetic 33-0 blown lead by the Colts, the biggest comeback in history. Jeff Saturday was the new head coach at the time. He replaced Frank Reich. Frank Reich was the quarterback for the Bills. I believe that's a typo. I got that wrong. Frank Reich, I believe, was replaced after the 33. I could be wrong, though. Maybe it was Jeff Saturday. But anyway, Frank Reich is still a part of the story regardless. Frank Reich was also the quarterback in the biggest college football game in history, as I said, in 2006. Until 2006. Oh, okay. So there was a bigger comeback in 2006. Okay, so anyway, it was exactly 30 years to the Bills' number 3 on the field, as I was explaining. Oh, the team that the Bills played against was the team from Houston, and that is essentially Harris County. And again, that connects to the day it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, which will lead to the comeback and third term for the Antichrist. Okay, so this hints at the third term comeback of the Antichrist king as a result of Harris's fall. The comeback was won with a controversial interception by Bills player 37, which hints at 3 times 7 and walls of security collapsing. Because the Israelites, when the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on Jericho, before they marched around in a symbolic 3 sets of 7, once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, 7 times while 7 trumpets were blown. And so God frequently uses 3 sets of 7 in his signs, and this is an instance of this, which is 37, which hints at 3 sets of 7. Judgment warning. The Antichrist's comeback will be controversial. He will be the 48th president, which is why the deficit score was 32, which hints at 4 times 8. The interception was thrown by Harris County player number 1, Warren Moon. Oh, it was his 50th pass attempt of the day. Moon equals Christ, and 50 equals church, as I explained earlier. This made this a judgment warning for the church. It was his 50th pass of the day, and moon symbolizes Christ. Watching the moon symbolizes watching Christ, as I just explained, okay? All right. Now, the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history was played in Houston, Harris County, so there's a parallel there. And it was Super Bowl 51, and the Antichrist will become the 51st vice president. That will be his big comeback when he is appointed the 51st vice president. Then he's in the door, and then Michelle just steps down, and he'll become the 48th president. So that's why the biggest comeback in Super Bowl history was Super Bowl 51, by the way. Okay, we're just getting started here, though. This is just scratching the surface. Lots more to be said here. Now, player number 3 connects to Dale Earnhardt number 3 and his car crash at the Daytona 500 in 2001. Damar Hamlin also connects with Denny Hamlin right here. Okay, this date here. Who won the Daytona 500 in 2020? Denny Hamlin. All right. So, and it connects with exactly 150 weeks. This is amazing. Damar Hamlin fell after this Daytona 500, which involves a crash, a very, very big crash. And the winner was Denny Hamlin as a result of the crash, because the crash happened on the last lap, right before who knows who would have won had the crash not happened. But Denny Hamlin won as a result of the crash. This 150 weeks connection is relevant because of a few reasons. First of all, it is the equivalent of 25,200 hours. So this is a typo. This should be over here. Okay? That is symbolic of 2,520 days, another period of time, hours, days. In Bible prophecy, in the most central prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, there is a symbolic 7 years, and which is the symbolic period of the time, a symbolic period of time regarding the period of the end times and the Antichrist, which is 2,520 days, which is what is hinted at with 25,200 hours. All right? So that's an Antichrist connection. Now, the Daytona 500 is also Antichrist symbolism because the 500th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance is the word Antichrist. Okay, now this Daniel chapter 9 prophecy is the 70 weeks prophecy that is broken into a period of 69 weeks and then the 70th week. But the 69 weeks is also further divided into 62 weeks and 7 weeks, which is why this was the 62nd Daytona 500 at the same time as the 69th NBA All-Star Game. It's amazing. Again, the 69 is broken into a 62 and a 7. And this 2,520 days in that prophecy is a symbolic 7, the 70th 7. Right? It's 7 years in the prophecy. And a biblical year, a prophetic year, is 12 months of 30 days. So that's why 2,520 days. But it is amazing that we have this 25,200 hours connection from this 62nd Daytona and 69th NBA, because again, this number is related to this prophecy involving 62 and 69. But furthermore, in that prophecy, the 62 and 69 are followed by this 2,520 in that prophecy. So that's in the correct order as well. This is also why this 7 months connection here too, following this, which I'll explain in a minute. Let's first get back to Denny Hamlin and the connection to Damar Hamlin. This date is February 17th, which is the date in the Hebrew calendar on which the flood judgment began, the 17th day of the second month. So this is flood judgment symbolism, but this sign involved a fiery crash. Peter said that the upcoming judgment would be symbolized by fire instead of water. Okay, but nonetheless, this is flood judgment symbolism. The date and the flood lasted for 150 days, a period of time, hence the 150 weeks, which is the equivalent of this 25,200 hours. So that's amazing. Another second witness. And this is how, by the way, God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic science. Another third witness in this connection that makes it relevant is that 150 weeks is 3 times 50 weeks. Okay, now, which further connects with the Highway US 50, but, and it also furthermore is the Daytona 500, which also hints at 50, by the way. But anyway, this hints at the Isaiah chapter 35. Okay, I know this from other signs, God has confirmed, for example, another 3 times 50 weeks connection to be hinting at the Highway 35. Well, there's a few reasons for this. The Isaiah chapter 35. Yeah. Because in that chapter, it's basically essentially symbolism for the rapture. And quote unquote in the chapter, the whole highway of holiness. So there's the quote unquote highway of holiness. And what is a Daytona 500? It's a car race. It's around a racetrack, a highway. Okay? So that's why we have this connection from this. But it's also connected to the rapture, which as you can see, there's a straightforward connection to the rapture. 150 weeks followed by 41 weeks followed by 222 days. Oh, I didn't explain the 41 weeks yet. So I'm probably going to be forgetting things and coming back to them here. It's difficult to remember everything all at once, right? Well, Warren Moon, the reason why he's number 1 is because of number 3. This biggest comeback in history or playoff history on the date 1-3 hints at 13, as does 1 followed 30 years later by number 3. And again, I think I mentioned earlier that the number 13 in the Bible is symbolic of the Antichrist, right? And again, that is confirmation for the 41 weeks, which is the 13th prime number, okay? Which ultimately leads on to the rapture. But we also have from her crash 35 days to the date it is predicted that Barack Obama will become the 48th president. So we have this 3 times 50 weeks, which hints at 35, and the highway of holiness, followed by this connection and then another 35 days to the 48th president. And why is it relevant from this sign over here? Well, not only is this Antichrist symbolism, what I've mentioned so far, the Daytona 500 and the 62 and the 69, but this 69th NBA All-Star game occurred in Chicago, and Barack Obama attended it. Barack Obama is from Chicago, and he is the basketball president. All right? Now, and so that's amazing, because the 69, in God's signs, the number 69 is symbolism for the following 70th seven, the period of the Antichrist and the end times. That's why Barack Obama prophetically spoke at the 69th UN General Assembly, the opening of it, the 69th UN. He will lead the governing UN body in the end times. And at that time, there was the cow with the 7 on its head born, which hinted at the 70th seven following the 69 in the prophecy. So anyway, that's a reason why this connects, okay? This Daytona 500 was a 2-day race, by the way, and because the first date it was rained out, which is Noah's flood symbolism, more confirmation of the 150 weeks connection, and the date, which is Noah's flood symbolism, okay? What's also Noah's flood symbolism is that this date, and this date was known ahead of time to be prophetic because of this connection. I knew that there would be Noah's flood symbolism sign on this date because of this, because it connects with exactly 490 weeks back to this date here. This most central prophecy that I'm talking about with the 62 and the 69 and the 70th seven is in Daniel 9:27. And exactly 490 weeks back, we get the date 9/27 in 2010. This was the day that Old Rose died, the actress Gloria Stewart, the oldest actress nominated for an Oscar, and God uses records in his signs for signs. She died at the age of 101, and she would have been she played Old Rose in the movie Titanic. Okay, so the Titanic is Noah's flood symbolism. It's a huge ship. So, but let me just get this. Let's try to remember here. She died at the age of 101, and she would have been let's see. No, she died at the age of 100. No. All right, I got it now. She died at the age of 100, and she played 101-year-old Old Rose in the movie. Okay, and she would have been 101 years old on the 100th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. And since the release of the new prophetic images of the Titanic, released in May of 2023, which focus on the serial number of the Titanic on the propeller's serial number, which is 101. So that's just amazing. We're talking about Gloria Stewart dying at 100, and she would have been 101 on the 100th anniversary of Titanic, and she played 101-year-old Old Rose. It's absolutely amazing. Now, why 101 is because it was 101 passengers on the Mayflower that arrived at the spiritual founding of America and landed on Plymouth Rock, which is why on this same day, February 17th, this flood judgment symbolic date that was known ahead of time because of this connection, Plymouth Rock was vandalized, which made an extreme judgment for America. Because Plymouth Rock is the founding of America, and symbolically, it's founded in Christ, because rock symbolizes Christ. There is a myth by those that generally don't like America that the Pilgrims didn't land on Plymouth Rock, and the whole thing is a myth. But actually, it's not true. There is the actual Plymouth Rock that's commemorated is the actual rock. There was a man that died in the late 1600s who said on his deathbed, who was a child of one of the pilgrims that landed, and he pointed to that rock. They were going to move it. He said, "Don't do anything with that rock. That's the Plymouth Rock." Anyway, there was a second generation guy who identified Plymouth Rock. So the point is that this is how God would do it anyway. He would leave behind a record of this spiritual founding of America, but it was 101 passengers. And that's why Old Rose at 101. And she played 101 Old Rose, and she would have been 101 on the 100th anniversary, and she died at 100. Well, anyway, 490 weeks, because this prophecy is 490 years. It's 70 times 7 years in the prophecy. The final 70th 7 is 7 years. It's a total of 490 years. And that's why this is extremely, and that's why it's amazing. We have the 62 Daytona and the 69th NBA after this 490 weeks connection, and it connects to Plymouth Rock, and we're talking about the Titanic and Noah's flood symbolism. Now, so it's amazing, okay? Now, so the NBA was on the 16th, and it went into the 17th. The Daytona 500 ran into the 2 days. The NBA game, though, was a one-day thing. It was on the 16th, but it makes it 2-day sign, okay? And on the first day, on the 16th, to open the Daytona 500 as part of his re-election campaign, Trump drove his limousine around the track. This was amazing because God is using Trump as God's trumpet to symbolize the book of Joshua when they marched around the walls of security. Let me just play a quick clip explaining President Trump and this parallel with the book of Joshua. President Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to highlight and confirm his signs. The word trump in archaic English means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. Donald Trump was born on a Sabbath day, and the portion of Torah that was read in synagogues on the day that Trump was born was the passage from the book of Numbers, in which God commanded the making of trumpets. Trump was born exactly 23 months, which happens to be exactly 700 days, before Israel was reborn. And God used Trump in prophetic signs regarding the restoration of Israel. Donald Trump chose his running mate, Mike Pence, and their two names, Trump-Pence, hints at trumpets. Trump's presidency, including his election campaign, was synonymous with his border wall of security. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on ancient Jericho, the Hebrews blew trumpets. Before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment on the ancient city of Jericho, the Hebrews marched around Jericho's walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. This was a 3 sets of 7. In the book of Revelation, which describes God's judgment in the end times period, there are also 3 sets of 7 judgments. When the Hebrews blew the trumpets at Jericho, it was an announcement from God of judgment on the city of Jericho. Likewise, President Trump's presidency was an announcement of judgment on the nation of America, God's Gentile nation and the only other nation in history besides Israel that was founded on a relationship with God. This is why President Trump's election campaign and presidency were synonymous with his border wall of security, and why on the first day of his presidency, on Inauguration Day, President Trump was exactly 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, which was 3 sets of 7 and paralleled the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua. Through the symbolic very beginning of Trump's presidency, God announced judgment on the nation. Joshua, the leader of the Hebrews, led them around the walls of security 7 times over 7 days, while 7 priests blew 7 trumpets. On the day that President Trump was elected by 77 electoral votes, the leader of Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, had been in power for exactly 7 years, 7 months, and 7 days. Okay, so going around a racetrack, with a Trump going around a racetrack, is a trumpet. It is a 3 sets of 7, is a book of Joshua sign. Because the marching around Jericho would have been in a circuit. It would have been like a racetrack, going around the track. And so that's why the trumpet, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his signs, went around the track on this extremely prophetic day here. Not only that, though, he rode around in his limousine that the Secret Service nicknames the Beast. And in Bible prophecy, the beast is a metaphor for the Antichrist, the 44th president, who the Secret Service nicknamed Renegade, because they also have a nickname not only for the limo, but the presidents. And Obama's nickname was Renegade, and this was on the same day as the sign involving the nicknamed limo, Beast. These signs go together, in other words. It's amazing. Why is this a renegade sign? Because in the 69th NBA All-Star game, at the halftime, the teenager that invented the dance that went viral, I don't know about it, I just know the news, she invented this dance called the Renegade Dance. And the big story about her is how there was all this sympathy in the media for her being overlooked as being the inventor of the dance that became this worldwide viral sensation. So she was on a lot of the media talk shows because it's an interesting story, I suppose. So they have the teenager on and they're like, wow, you know, you made this dance and everyone's doing it and no one's giving you the credit, even though they're giving her the credit, you know. But anyway, because of all this hype for this teenager that invented the dance, supposedly, she was invited to the NBA All-Star game, and she performed the dance with the cheerleaders at the halftime, the Renegade Dance. This was in Chicago. Obama was in attendance. It was the 69th NBA. It's all Antichrist revelation, symbolism, identifying Barack Obama, because he was nicknamed the Renegade. That's his nickname for the Secret Service. And it was on the day of the beast, which is the metaphor in the Bible for the Antichrist. Okay, now, the thing is, I talked about all of this, Daniel chapter 9 prophecy here, and the 70th seven, and that's the reason for this exact 7 months. It's a period of time, as is the 70th seven in the prophecy, and it follows, again, as I was saying, the 69 in the prophecy. Well, we have exactly 7 months later, Obama went viral in social media with his tweet doing the renegade dance. Obama did the renegade dance in a tweet as part of, get out the vote kind of campaign thing, and it went viral. And he does the renegade dance exactly 7 months after the girl does the renegade dance at the 69th NBA Finals that he attended in Chicago. It's amazing. By the way, one of the teams, because the teams were led by the leader of the two, and one of them was LeBron James, who wears jersey 23, a GOAT, greatest of all time, Antichrist symbolism. His team won. And Barack Obama also wore jersey 23, the basketball president. That's another connection that points to Obama. Also, he will serve non-consecutive terms and skip the 23rd presidency, just like Grover Cleveland, who skipped the 23rd presidency. Barack Obama will serve non-consecutive terms. Maybe I said that wrong, but you get what I'm saying. And LeBron James also is famous for winning the championship for Cleveland while wearing jersey number 23. So anyway, more said about that in other videos, but that's another connection to Obama. But anyway, it's astounding. We have the exact 7 months here to the Obama doing the renegade dance on September 16th, 2020. Okay, now this connects further on with 4 times 44 days, which is a number God uses because it's the 44th president we are talking about, to the date that he took the thing. And the Antichrist will be the Antichrist for the purpose of enforcing the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing. And Obama took the thing on this date here, March 11, 2021, which was the day that Biden gave his first public address since he had been installed in the you-know-what house, and he gave his big thing speech. This was the day of his big thing speech, the first time he had addressed the public since he was installed, and it was the day that Obama took the thing, coincidentally. But there's more coincidence, because this was the same day that the Dow gained 188 points, exactly 9 months after it lost 188 points, and 9 months is extremely prophetic, symbolizes the birth pains of the end times. But also it was the same day that arguably the most famous preacher died. Billy Graham is the most famous preacher, and it was said that this man would be, or was, the successor to him, Louis Palau, and he died at the age of 86, which hints at 8 times 6 equals 48, which hints at the 48th president Antichrist, Obama, who took the thing on this day. But the fact that we have this Christian sign on this day is more confirmation that the main theme of God's big picture of signs is judgment warning for the church through the mark of the Antichrist and a testing of faith and perseverance through the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing, which is clearly identified here. Now, just another confirmation of that. This was the 11th of the month. It connects back with 90 days to the 11th of the month and the day that the SN9 fell off of its platform, and on, as I've explained many other times in other videos. So I won't go any further, okay? But the point is that it confirms this, that this is the thing, okay? Because it connects to the symbolic day that the thing was approved. And I already explained a little bit earlier, because this was the middle date between the eclipses, which is where and why she will crash in St. Louis, okay? Now, speaking of 3 sets of 7, it is then another 3 sets of 7 weeks exactly to the Antichrist's birthday, his 60th birthday, and at the time they were asking for donations of $660 or $6 to donate to the presidential library in Chicago, speaking of Chicago. But on the same day that Obama turned 60 years old, there was a 6.0 earthquake magnitude 110 miles off the shore of Tokyo, where at the time the Olympics were going on. The Olympics is world symbolism. Obama will be the Antichrist that will lead the UN and the world. 110 because Joshua died at the age of 110, and he led the Israelites around the walls of security in a symbolic 3 sets of 7. Furthermore, the walls of security collapsed due to an earthquake. Archaeology proves this. And so Joshua is earthquake symbolism, and this earthquake occurred. It was an earthquake that occurred 110 miles off the shore of the Olympics, which confirms this 3 times 7 weeks connection, making it relevant. In other words, this trail of signs is completely profound and solid and true. Well, the prediction will prove it. If you're still skeptical, fair enough. The prediction, though, when it comes to pass, it will prove it, and then there will be absolutely zero discussion, zero doubt. It'll be 100% true when the prediction comes to pass, right? Because from the date 8/4 in his birthday, it is 840 days, which hints at 8/4, to the date it is predicted he'll become the 48th president, and 48 is an inverse of 8/4. Furthermore, in the rest of the world, the date 8/4 is hinted at 4/8. Also, the date 8/4 in the calendar is the 216th day, and 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, which hints at the Antichrist. Also, 840 days is the equivalent of exactly 120 weeks, which is 2 times 2 times 30 weeks, which hints at 223, which is the 48th prime number, which is why we have this astounding connection to the date it is predicted he will become the 48th president. This is amazing, okay, from this birth date of his, okay? By the way, this also applies from the date he was born to the day that Kennedy died. And Kennedy died while in office, the 35th president. He died in his car while it was about to go onto the on-ramp for the I-35 highway, speaking of Isaiah chapter 35 and the highway of holiness, as I explained earlier. Okay, yes, because Kennedy died the same number of days from the birth of Obama, okay? So that's why, in other words, one reason why Kennedy died with this connection is because of this connection right here. This was extremely prophetic. This birth date of his 60th, when he was asking for donations of $660 or $6, right? The 6.0 earthquake. Wow. All right. Now, also Japan symbolizes nuclear weapons, and there will be an aspect of a nuclear bomb in Manhattan that will be a part of the Antichrist's rise to power, or him becoming in his power. So anyway, there's a second witness to this trail right here, which is 10 months and 19 days, which hints at 9/11, which confirms this trail right here as a second witness. All right. We're done the bottom of the diagram. There's just a couple more things. The day of this, we didn't finish Dale Earnhardt yet, okay? Now, Damar Hamlin connects with Denny. Oh, yes, we're getting to that now. Okay, so Damar Hamlin connects with Denny Hamlin, who won the race as a result of the crash. Now, let's get into the crash. The crash was a crash of the car driven by Ryan Newman, and he ended up going to the hospital just like Damar Hamlin. Okay, coincidentally. Ryan in Irish means king, little king, and Newman, one becomes a new man when they are in Christ, the King of Kings. The car flipped into the air, high into the air, in a fiery crash, which is symbolic of Kamala Harris's fiery crash from high in the air in her plane crash. All right? It's also hinting, by the way, at the eruption of Yellowstone and the eruption on the sun. But that's another story that God willing, will have documented into another video at some point. We just want to stay on this topic here. So there was the fiery crash. His car was number 6. That's because it hints at Dale Earnhardt, number 3, and Damar Hamlin, number 3, which add up to 6. Now, Denny Hamlin won the race by, I believe, I forget. It was a fraction of a second. But the fraction of a second, I'm pretty sure, was prophetic. Regardless, it was a fraction of a second, and he beat car number 12. And that's why this 19 years connection from this Daytona 5, and Ryan Newman survived his crash because of the regulations that were installed after Dale Earnhardt died in his crash in the Daytona 500 19 years earlier. Okay. Now, the reason for car number 11 and car number 12 is that it is one of these 11th hour going into the 12th hour signs, which is 9/11 symbolism. Because on 9/11, it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, in New York City, a name made up of 11 letters, and on and on. The second building had 47 floors, which hints at 4 plus 7 equals 11. The passengers on the second plane had 56 passengers, which hints at 5 plus 6 equals 11. Okay, so, but by the way, also the crew of the second plane was 9, which gives us a 9 and 11. But there was all these 11s in the 9/11 sign, including Flight 11. And Flight 11, by the way, departed from Governor's Island in Boston, which is where John Winthrop lived, the first governor. And he is known for his 11 ships in his flotilla. And before their disembarkment, founding the Massachusetts Bay Colony in 1630, he delivered a speech that was derived from Deuteronomy chapter 28, which regarded God's promises of blessings and curses before the Israelites crossed into the promised land, because the pilgrims saw their crossing of the Atlantic as analogous to that into the New World. And anyway, the number 11 symbolizes God's promises of blessings and curses. But also, there's all these 11s, Flight 11, Crew of 11, towers that looked like a giant 11, because Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which in ancient Israel referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness. And in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out, as in last chance for the nation to repent and turn back to God, which is why the judgment warning on 9/11. 9, judgment, 11, promises of blessings and curses. Okay? So there's a judgment. So that's why these signs involving 11 and 12 hint at the 11th hour going into the 12th hour. Okay? Last chance for America to repent. So that's why this is a 9/11 sign, this Daytona 500, which is why it connects with 19 years to the Daytona 500 in 2001, the year of 9/11. Because 19 is a 9/11 number. It symbolizes 9/11. Through the 9/11 events, God was pointing to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 10 through 11. And 9 plus 10 equals 19. Also, number 10 is symbolism for God's perfect order. And so 9, judgment, 10, perfection, perfect judgment, 19. Now, what also confirms that this is a 9/11 sign, and so is this, is that Dale Earnhardt crashed 56% of a year before 9/11. And that's amazing because 56 is 7 plus 7 times 7. And that's exactly how the 3 sets of 7 is in the book of Joshua. They marched around once per day for 7 days, and then on the 7th day, 7 times while blowing 7 trumpets. It was a 7 plus a 7 times 7, which is 56. And on 9/11, it was 7 times 7 times 7 firefighters that died, and there were 56 passengers on the second flight, which was very prophetic. because the second flight was the second witness that it was an act of terrorism and not an accident, which made it therefore judgment from God, a confirmation that it was a judgment warning from God, in other words, that paralleled Isaiah 9, 10, and 11 when the Assyrians raided the ancient Israel. Okay, also the Dow was closed at 9,605. The 6 and the 5 add up to 11, giving us a 9 and 11. 5 and 6 adds up to 11. Okay, 9 and 11 is all about the number 11, hence why the 56% of a year connection. But not only that, 56 is also a 3 sets of 7. And the 110 stories of the Twin Towers hint at Joshua, who was 110, and the collapse of the walls of security. Also, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Dale Earnhardt's son, was the man that waved the green flag to begin this race. President Trump was the Grand Marshal. He led the Daytona 500 around the track, 3 sets of 7 symbolism at this Daytona 500, but it was also Dale Earnhardt Jr. that was a part of this race who waved the green flag to begin the race, which made it a solid connection to the death of his father in the Daytona 500 19 years earlier. Also, speaking of walls of security collapsing, which is what the 3 sets of 7 that I've been demonstrating here symbolize, it was 19 years in between when the Babylonians seized Jerusalem and the walls of security were breached. And so 19 years is also symbolic of the walls of security collapsing in God's judgment. Okay, so that's a solid connection right there. So here we have all of this now explained, except for up here. Now, we're also the day of the rapture will also be the day that it is predicted that an asteroid will hit Earth. And that's confirmed through Damar Hamlin. Because 9 months and 11 days before Denny Hamlin collapsed, because 9/11 is collapse symbolism, because of the towers that collapsed on 9/11, before Damar Hamlin collapsed, 9 months and 11 days back was his birthday. And on his birthday, there's more reasons for why the prophetic birthday, which is explained in the other video, by the way. But this was the day that the 2013 BO-76 asteroid passed very close to Earth. It was a big news story. And, of course, had it hit Earth, it would have been catastrophic. But it passed very close to Earth. And this is amazing because this BO-76 asteroid hints at Barack Obama. BO stands for Barack Obama. Okay? And the severe persecution from the Antichrist will happen after the rapture on the day of the asteroid. Now, this asteroid, BO asteroid, was exactly 60 years, 6 months, 6 weeks, and 6 days after the birth of Barack Obama. And that is amazing confirmation that this is, in fact, a Barack Obama sign. Now, the asteroid the full name is 2013 BO-76, because I assume it was discovered in 2013. But this 13 is a confirmation for the Damar Hamlin 13 with the Warren Moon, as I explained, which is confirmation of this 13 weeks, or 13th prime number weeks. So 9 months and 11 days plus 13th prime number plus 220 days gets us to the asteroid, from this asteroid. Okay, it's very straightforward. It's amazing. Now, on the same day, more confirmation, there was a prophetic fire in Mile High Stadium. The name Bama in Hebrew means high place. It's a euphemism in the Bible for the false religious worship that the Jews would do on tops of mountains. Bama. Okay? Now, that's why his name is Bama, but there was a fire in the upper part of on the upper deck of not only Mile High Stadium, but it was the upper deck of it. But Mile High Stadium, because Denver, which is where the stadium is the highest city in America, the highest major city, which is why Barack Obama, held his Democrat national acceptance speech in Mile High Stadium, in Denver, which is 850 feet above sea level, which hints at 8 plus 5 equals 13, as does the 76 equal 7 plus 6 equals 13. More confirmation of the 13th prime number connection right here, as I was saying. And again, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. Also, 7 times 6 equals 42, a number in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the Antichrist. And 5 divided by 8 equals, or sorry, 5 divided by 8 equals I think it's 8 divided by 5 equals 1.6, which hints at 4 times 0.4, which hints at the 44th president. Okay, so anyway. Also, Barack Obama moved to Chicago in 1985. Okay, so, and that's very important, but I explained that in other videos, why it's important he moved to Chicago in 1985. But it actually connects to football, because it's the Chicago Bears. But that's also explained in the other Damar Hamlin video, the Gerald Ford video, which you must watch. It's an amazing video, and very, very important. But I think we are done with this diagram here. All right, one thing that I left out is this connection right here. This 44 months exact connection is a second witness to this trail right here. So from the very prophetic signs, including the crash of the Ryan Newman car that went high into the air, the fiery crash, it is exactly 44 months to the date of the predicted crash of Kamala Harris, a fiery crash from a high place, which then connects to the 48th president becoming the president again with 35 days. And I explained the highway to holiness symbolism in that. All right, so there you have that connection too. And furthermore, the fiery crash that was flipped, the car flipped into the air, that also is asteroid symbolism. We have 44 months and then 222 days to this, to the asteroid and the rapture, which is why Ryan Newman connects to the rapture here too. It's very straightforward, 44 months and then 220 days. That's amazing too, actually. But what I also just remembered is that the reason for the Daytona 500 and it being 490 weeks after the Titanic, which, as I was explaining, hints at the Mayflower and the 101 passengers that arrived on the East Coast in Massachusetts, is that the Daytona 500 is a historic race. It's the preeminent race in the NASCAR circuit because of its history. And it began with the racetrack on the beach, right next to the ocean. In other words, it hints at Plymouth Rock. When the Pilgrims landed on essentially the shore, the beach, the Plymouth Rock. That's why the Daytona 500 is important here. It's not just a race. It's not just the numbers of the race. It's not just the number 500, but it's the location. It's on the East Coast. Historically, it's a race that happened on the beach, which is why we have the connection to the Titanic and the Mayflower, because it's East Coast landing on the east coast of the U.S. symbolism. And it was a track as well. So it's marching around the security walls symbolism too. Daytona 500 tying into the spiritual founding of America, which God is warning America's relationship with God has departed, unlike the founding of America, which was founded in its relationship with God. That's why God is pointing to the Daytona 500 in order to give this symbolism for the Mayflower. And again, the Daytona 500 sign was the day of the vandalism on Plymouth Rock. So more confirmation of what I'm saying, that the Daytona 500 that is historically a race on the beach is pointing to Plymouth Rock. It happened on the day that Plymouth Rock was vandalized. All right, I just discovered another amazing connection here. That is that the Obama Renegade Dance sign was exactly 48 days. Again, Obama will become the 48th president, and again, Renegade was his nickname as president from the Secret Service. It will be exactly 48 days after the first studio recording session with Bruce Springsteen for their podcast named Renegades, Born in the USA. Which is quite interesting given, well, it's a personal thing, but that's the date of my birthday, speaking of birth. And Barack Obama was not born in the USA. That's the irony here. That's why this is a prophetic sign from God. Him and his friendship with Bruce Springsteen, who is known for his song Born in the USA, and them doing a podcast together titled Born in the USA, because Barack Obama wasn't born in the USA. It's absolutely amazing. But the 48 days connection is a confirmation that this renegade will be the 48th president. This 48 days is also 1 month and 17 days, which hints at 117, which, as I explained in the must-watch video titled Harris's crash will be on 10/17 equals the eclipse peaked at 1:17 p.m. The number 117 is very important, and one thing that it symbolizes is the mark of the Antichrist. Okay, so again, from this Renegade Dance sign, which connects to the Renegade Dance in the NBA All-Star Game, it's 48 days back to the date of the first studio session, Renegades Born in the USA. And Obama's name is Renegade because of his nickname as a president, and 48 days hints at the Renegade becoming the president again. The 48th president. Also, regarding this 48 days in between the day that Obama posted a viral tweet about his Renegade dance, him doing the trendy Renegade dance, and the day of the first session in which they recorded their podcast, Renegades. That day, July 30th, 2020, was also a very prophetic day for other signs, which now it has come to light and has been realized were connected to Obama and Bruce Springsteen and their Renegades podcast. On July 30th, 2020, NASA launched its Perseverance probe to Mars. The Perseverance probe to Mars hints at the perseverance of the saints described in Bible prophecy, the perseverance of the saints with the Antichrist and his persecution. This is why the Perseverance probe was launched on the day that Obama did his Renegades podcast. That's amazing. But also, as well, this was the day that Herman Cain died. The former presidential candidate Herman Cain died from the CVD disease on this date. And Herman Cain was known for his 999 tax plan. That was the big thing about his famous presidential run. He was, for a brief period, one of the top contenders, second to Trump. He was a challenger to Trump. You know, they periodically had... anyway, so Herman Cain was a big deal back in the presidential campaign. No, you know what? Maybe Herman Cain was a candidate before the 2016 presidential run. I forget. No, I think it was. But anyway, Herman Cain was known for his 999 tax plan. And the number 9 is the most important number in God's signs, as it symbolizes God's judgment in the Bible. And God often repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. Hence why Herman Cain's 999 tax plan. The name Cain, C-A-I-N, is a hint at the judgment, the number 9, in the story of Cain and Abel. Cain murdered his brother and was judged. He was the first man born. Herman Cain announced his presidency on his birth date. And Cain was the first person born to a woman in the Bible. So he is symbolism for the judgment of man. Cain and Abel, Cain in the Cain and Abel story. And that's what's also hinted at with Herman Cain's 999 tax plan. And his death was from the CVD disease, which we can therefore infer that the CVD disease is connected to the persecution and perseverance of God's faithful from the Antichrist, which will be from the thing that is the thing for the CVD disease. And that's why, again, Perseverance was launched on the day of Obama and Bruce Springsteen, born in the USA, the Renegades podcast, which is 48 days to Obama's Renegade Dance, which identifies the renegade Antichrist, the 48th president. And again, this diagram then leads to the date it is predicted he will become the 48th president in a straightforward, clear way. It is absolutely amazing. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Please leave a like and upvote the video. And once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more. Don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the BitChute.com or the Odyssey.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.